underway now. Top 10 event by the Alabama Bureau of Travel and Tourism, and actually in the whole Southeast now. And this began in the mid-1980s in conjunction with the restoration program with several goals in mind. It's just a fun activity to get out and see these beautiful birds. Anybody can participate. I know a couple articles and websites have said that we're going hiking to nest sites. There's no hiking involved. Anybody can participate. We go out to Town Creek Fishing Center, get out of your car and look up. So that's about the extent of it. It's also a great educational program to help develop awareness and appreciation for these beautiful birds and the need to protect our natural resources. And it's a great opportunity with our guest speakers that come in. You get to see these birds right here. It's awesome. We have a bald eagle here this weekend, Captain Bly. He's a bit of a wily guy. You'll like him. Now, we hadn't had eagles nesting in the state of Alabama since 1949, which is a travesty. So in the mid-80s, a restoration program was enacted to help rebuild a nesting population here in the state. So between the years of 1985 and 1991, 91 young eagles were released in various spots around the state, kind of little hot spots that have big water, big trees, and it worked. According to our last count in 2006, we had 77 nests statewide confirmed. And the number's going up and up every year since then. Every state in the union, except Hawaii, has at least one pair, including little tiny Rhode Island, and even Washington, D.C. has a pair. I'm going to do a little bragging here. For those of you not from this area, you are in Marshall County. Welcome. We are the little hot spot of the state because of the Tennessee River that flows kind of down from the Chattanooga area and then turns and flows northeast. So the series of dams created this 69,000-acre lake, which is actually the Tennessee River. Great spot. So we do have more bald eagles here than any other county. And even better news, June 2007, delisted, no longer endangered, not even threatened. They have been completely delisted, which is a tremendous success story. They do still have protection from the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act.
And lots of feathers. I'm kind of concerned about this being released anytime soon.
As Dr. Billings said, Holly lost her primary feathers due to being hit by a car. She was housed just long enough to grow new feathers, which allowed her to be returned to the wild by spring. Perhaps sensing she was due to be released right after this presentation, this owl decided to push the timetable ahead slightly. And right after everyone left the auditorium, she flew out of the open patio doors into the night air. This individual great horned owl is classified as an imprint, which means she was reared by humans and thus thinks of herself essentially as a human rather than a bird of prey. Although this makes it impossible for her to be released into the wild, she lives a good life and serves as an educational ambassador. She also noticed Mandy perched high in the rafters.
What we would see is personality. Now, she does do some courtship stuff. I mean, since she is praying, she thinks she thinks we're all the same, whatever that is. So a lot of times during breeding season, she'll hoot at me, and I'll hoot back with her.
But thank you. And again, my name is David Hollaway. Everybody just calls me Big Dave. And I'm the senior naturalist at McDowell Environmental Center. And if you have a chance after the program, whatever, we got some brochures. We have many different departments. We got an organic farm department, folk school, which is pretty cool. And we have our environmental department. And we celebrate the biodiversity of Alabama. We're very, very blessed. And tons of times I'll go out. You don't hear that word naturalist all the time. And many times I've had kids and even grown-ups like, Big Dave, a naturalist, what are you guys? Is that like a hippie person? And I'm like, no, not really. Or is a naturalist, is that one of them like tree huggers, those granola bar dudes, and you hug trees and stuff? I'm like, no. And like a kid asked me a couple days ago, the naturalist is not a nudist either. Don't really run naked through the woods or anything like that. Well, kind of about that. barred owl, the species that is connected to you, that is totally a part of your yard, your neighborhood, the trees, the grass, the soil, the clean water, the clean air. In nature, all things connect. If you have woods and lowland, even like he likes swamps and wetlands too, but you can actually find these guys in your neighborhood. This is a barred owl. The law of nature, adapt, migrate, or die. So over the years, these raptors have learned. I have rescued birds of prey, hawks, owls in the middle of downtown Birmingham and in the middle of downtown Huntsville too. What's the name of that mountain? That Montesano Mountain, that big road that goes up there. I've rescued 2 barred owls and a Cooper's hawk, which is the smaller species of hawks that flew into a car. And that's 3 raptors just on that road going up to that museum area. And so they have, over the years, adapted learning to live in city environments. But this is our barred owl. This is the guy that everybody hears. Anybody else? Can you do one? Can you do the barred? Way better. Way better. A grown man, a daddy, barely can get 100 pounds per square inch in a man's grip. So in my mind, this dude's as strong as 4 daddies, just in the gripping power. 400 pounds per square inch of pressure, but he only weighs 3.5 pounds. Isn't that awesome?
RC wrapped a wide leather strap around a tall, straight pine tree in the middle of a healthy Wisconsin forest, not far from the Wisconsin River. He hooked the strap into his harness, sunk first one spike and then the other spike on his boots into the tree, stood up, leaned forward, raised the strap, and then leaned back, putting his full weight and trust in his gear. Before he climbed any farther, he looked over his shoulder at his 2 partners, Tim and Beth. "Go get him," said Beth. And then he started to climb, once again leaning forward, lifting the strap, resetting the spikes, and climbing up. As he climbed, way overhead, a pair of bald eagles circled, screaming in protest. RC didn't even give him a look. In all his years of doing this work, he'd heard a lot of eagles scream, but he knew that their barks were a lot worse than their bites. One had never attacked him. They would just circle and scream. He looked up at the nest at the top of the tree. He guessed it probably weighed close to 1,000 pounds, about average. He'd seen them a lot bigger than that. Nests that were twice that size that eagles had built for years and years and years. When he got just below the nest, he stopped and rigged his gear. A couple of pulleys with ropes that went back down to the ground. Some safety lines so that as he climbed up to the top of the nest, he wouldn't fall. As he pulled himself up over the edge of the nest, he was met by 2 faces, 2 small eaglets, curious, who immediately then ran back to the other side of the nest.
And there are some things that are common to all raptors. Number 1, if you look at the head of a raptor, it's going to have a very large, strong, powerful, curved beak. It is also going to have, and you can't tell it that well in this photograph, but it is going to have forward-facing eyes that have very good vision, up to 8 times greater than human vision when looking forward, and about twice the peripheral vision of a human. Owls have what we call tunnel vision. So not only are they looking straight ahead, but they see a very small area of that forward view. If you want to get an idea of what an owl sees when he's looking around the world, do your hands up like we used to do as kids, like you're pretending you have binoculars on. This is an owl's view of the world. Harris hawks are found in the far southwest, in southern Arizona, southern New Mexico, possibly in western Texas, and possibly in southeastern California. Black vultures have an unusual habit when they're feeding. when they're feeding on carrion, whether they found it themselves or whether they're robbing the turkey vulture, if they're disturbed, they will, how shall I put this, they will upchuck. They will disgorge their meal. And we think that's because it enables them to fly away more easily. Aspen was the female of a pair of golden eagles that were hatched at the zoo, as I said. They were from the first clutch of eggs that these golden eagles had laid in the zoo. And the parents incubated the eggs, but once they hatched, they didn't know what to do with them. It was kind of like they looked down and they were like, oh, that's what we're in, those big round things. And so our choice was to hand raise the bird and thus imprint it, or to let the birds die. And so we chose to hand raise it.
And one of my favorite activities on that programming is the bird of prey program, utilizing non-releasable birds of prey for environmental education. And I always like to stress that, and I'll probably say it again, all of the birds that we keep and utilize for programming are non-releasable. That means they have something wrong with them that they cannot go back into the wild. When we get in an injured bird, and the lady here tonight, she's a vet, so she does this all the time, the number one goal is to make that bird better and turn it back loose and give it a second chance. So anytime the animal's coming injured, that is the goal. It's not always possible. We're talking about sometimes a 6 ounce to a 12 to 15 pound bird that collides with a 4,000 pound vehicle going 60 or 70 miles an hour. It's amazing any of them even survive. But many of them do. And many of them are releasable. But there is a percentage that is not. And the non-releasable birds can be used in environmental education programs. You know, over the years, you get in just all sorts of injuries. The number one is hit by vehicles. Number two is still shooting. It is against the law to shoot any bird of prey, but that is still the number 2 injury that we deal with is gunshot wounds. And then we deal with poisoning. Poisoning is a major problem in a lot of birds of prey. That's incidental poisoning. And a lot of it is in owls.
This owl is found in nearly every habitat throughout the eastern United States and southern Canada. At home in environments ranging from the Arctic tundra to tropical rainforest, and from the desert to suburban backyards, this is one of the most widespread and common owls in North America.
And this is a red-tailed hawk. This bird was actually shot a couple of months ago. It is illegal to shoot birds of prey, but he was shot. And so he's not been doing a lot of programs yet. He's just kind of getting into it. His beak, of course, is extremely strong. He uses it to rip up things and swallow them. And learning from those other people's mistakes is you don't want him to get a hold of an ear or a nose, or basically anything else on your face. Now, once again, we've had him since '89. One of the most vocal eagles I've been around. And he likes to do that every once in a while, too.
The Lake Guntersville State Park is comprised of over 6,000 acres of natural woodlands, which overlook the 69,000-acre Guntersville Reservoir. And as park naturalist Patti Donnellan mentioned in her introduction, for over 20 years the Eagle Awareness Program has not only provided educational presentations such as the ones you have just seen, but it also offers guided field trips to view bald eagles and other wildlife in their natural habitats. The Town Creek Campground and Fishing Pier is one of the key viewing areas visited during these field trips. During the winter, most of the bald eagles at the Lake Guntersville State Park are migratory and nest in the northern states, primarily around the Great Lakes region. This migratory population begins to arrive at Lake Guntersville in small numbers during November, with the majority arriving by mid to late December. While the migratory eagles do not build nests here, they have selected secluded areas at Town Creek as their preferred roosting site. They leave the roost at daylight and return just before dark. When winds begin to consistently blow from the south and daily temperatures warm up to the 50 to 60 degree range during mid-February through mid-March, the migratory eagles begin heading back to the Great Lakes region as weather conditions permit, with their migration routes taking advantage of thermals, updrafts, and food resources. Some stragglers may stay as late as April, while other bald eagles have now taken up permanent residence at Lake Guntersville. This nest near the Guntersville Dam provided another key field trip destination. The site happens to be located just across from a private firearms range, and while the eagle family seemed to take the near daily raucous of gunfire in stride, it is something eagle watchers this season had to try and get used to. Bald eagles build the largest nest of any North American bird, as the model nest built by wildlife storyteller Jim Pfitzer, who we saw earlier, demonstrates. Bald eagles construct their nest from broken twigs on the ground, as well as those they can break off of surrounding trees, some of which, depending on availability, may be up to a mile away from the nest. Eagles commence the construction by placing sticks in layers. The first layer is placed in the shape of a triangle. The following layers are also laid in a triangular pattern, but progressively rotated. Each stick has others woven in between. When completed, a nest may be up to 13 feet deep, over 8 feet wide, and weigh over 2 tons, more than sturdy enough to support a human adult. To make the nest comfortable and suitable for raising eaglets, the nest is variously lined with pine needles, moss, corn stalks, grass, and other similar fibers. Additional lining may be provided by the eagle's own feathers. Bald eagles may live up to 25 years in the wild and mate for life. Upon reaching breeding maturity at around 5 years of age, bald eagles often return to the area where they were born, and, once paired, may produce 1 to 3 eggs per year. In the southeast region of the U.S., eggs will be laid from November to January. During the incubation period, which lasts approximately 35 days, both parents take turn with brooding duties so that the eggs are never left unattended, which allows the other parent to hunt and look for nesting material. If more than one egg is produced, they will hatch in the order they were laid. Eaglets break through their shells by using their egg tooth, a small pointed bump on the top of the beak. It can then take between 12 to 48 hours to hatch after the first break in the shell has been made. Sometimes multiple chicks will survive, but it is not uncommon for the older eaglet to kill the younger one, especially if the older eaglet is female, as they are consistently larger than the males. Perhaps such lethal sibling rivalry took place at this nest, for in the space of the 2 days during this filming in mid-February, only one eaglet was ever spotted again. Eaglets are born with soft grayish-white down, and at 3 to 4 weeks of age, grow a secondary coat of gray down. As we have seen, eaglets feed by taking shredded pieces of meat from the beaks of their parents, which at this nest appears to be the mom the majority of the time. While moving about the nest when the eaglets are very young, the parents will keep their talons balled as if making a fist, in order to avoid accidentally skewering their offspring. During the nesting season, this branch was one of Dad's favorite limbs, which were 150 feet or so from the nest. When the eaglets have just hatched, the female's attention and vigilance on them is virtually constant, and it is the male's job to provide food for the family. Eventually, the female will resume her share of the hunting, and as the eaglets grow larger and stronger, the parents progressively leave the nest for longer periods of time. Nonetheless, they always remain within 2 miles of their eaglets during the nesting cycle. Another breeding season ritual is that both parents protect their nesting territory not only from predators, but other bald eagles as well. This territory can extend for up to 2 square miles. As mentioned a bit earlier, bald eagles are powerful flyers and use thermal convection currents to maximum advantage during the daylight hours in which the convections are generated. When gliding and flapping, bald eagles can reach speeds of 35 to 43 miles per hour. Transporting a fish only slows the eagle down by 5 miles per hour. And when diving, though seldomly in a total vertical slope, these eagles can reach speeds of 75 to 99 miles per hour. Here, one of the parents is making sure the turkey vulture above knows that descending to a lower altitude has not been authorized. While this bald eagle was on patrol, it apparently stumbled into a red-tailed hawk's territory and had to react defensively by performing not 1 but 2 barrel rolls. As the slow-motion replay will show, this eagle is able to instantly turn upside down in mid-flight with razor-sharp talons suddenly outstretched and ready to rip. Able to routinely fly, clutching prey weighing at least half his body weight, Dad Eagle proudly displayed his bass catch for over 20 minutes. Here, the proud parents share a moment of quality time on another favored limb within line of sight of the nest. A bald eagle's diet consists mainly of fish, but they are also opportunistic feeders who prey upon waterfowl, small mammals, and even scavenge the carcasses of most any animal, including a whale. As can be glimpsed here, males and females are identical in plumage coloration, but in size, females are typically 25% larger. The size of bald eagles varies by location. The smallest specimens are presently found in Florida, while the largest are found in Alaska. Females average in at 13 to 17 pounds, while males typically weigh from 5 to 9 pounds. A bald eagle's body length ranges from 28 to 40 inches, with wingspans measuring from 5 to 8 feet. The construction and location of a bald eagle nest is always a function tailored to the characteristics of the surrounding environment. And in parts of Canada and Alaska where trees are scarce and are in short supply, bald eagles will nest on the ground. But the preferred location is near the tops of trees that are 50 to 150 feet tall and as close to a fish-abundant waterway as possible. As we see here, the ideal trees have large V-shaped crowns and provide a good vantage for the eagles to survey their surroundings. It is now early March, as will be more apparent in the following scenes as the eaglet stands taller in the nest. Its gray downy feathers are being replaced by dark juvenile ones. This change typically occurs a month and a half after hatching. As the pressures of nature dictate, eaglets must grow rapidly. They typically add 1 pound to their body weight every 4 to 5 days. At around 2 weeks after hatching, they have gained enough strength to hold their head up for feeding. At 3 weeks of age, they are 1 foot tall, with their beaks and feet already approaching adult size. Between 4 to 5 weeks of age, eaglets are able to stand, which affords them the opportunity to begin tearing up food for themselves. By 6 weeks, the eaglets are approaching the size of their parents. Now approximately 10 weeks old and still a few weeks shy of being ready to venture on its first flight, the eaglet, as indicating by twisting its head down and to the side, still coaxes its parents to be dutifully fed. And it is around this time period when an eaglet's appetite is at its greatest. But we see Mom is beginning to show signs of encouraging independence by not feeding her youngster as immediately as she did in the previous weeks. The parents are also staying out of the nest for increasingly longer periods of time, though still diligently patrolling the nest territory. Now, 2 weeks later than the few previous scenes, the eaglet is progressively stretching and flapping its wings, these actions resembling a pre-flight dance of sorts, and Mom is clearly taking notice of this progress. By 13 weeks of age, eaglets are mature enough to take their first flight. This can be quite perilous, as 40% do not survive it. Those that do will typically remain around the nest for 4 to 5 weeks, taking short flights as their primary feathers continue to fill in and their wings strengthen. They have to learn to hunt by watching their parents and other bald eagles, and have only the remainder of the spring and summer to become good at feeding themselves before they're on their own. Thus, the first winter is the most dangerous and difficult part of an eagle's life. Notice the eaglet taking a piece of fish for itself and placing it to the left side of the nest, which seems to be the favorite kitchen area for the family this season. Learning to snatch food morsels away from other eagles can be a key strategy in helping to offset a juvenile's hunting inexperience once it's fully on its own. In another action seeming to signal encouragement for the eaglet to venture out on its first flight, Mom leaves the nest with food in her mouth rather than feeding it to Junior. On this evening of March 23, 2010, this was the last time myself and other regular watchers of this nest saw the eaglet here. But a week or so later, naturalist Patti Donnellan checked the area and spotted a juvenile flying ungracefully above her at the river's edge. While it can't be said with 100% certainty that this was indeed the same eaglet, odds are good that it probably was.